I think there are really two distinct moments that made deep impressions on me that maybe were reasons why I became an art dealer, curator, collector. My mother was an art historian and wanted to educate her children. So whenever the opportunity arose, she would take us to visit the museum. And I remember when I was about 6, she took me to the Art Institute of Chicago. And she introduced me to contemporary art. And there was a piece by Robert Rauschenberg there. And it was a goat with a tire around it. And I'm trying to remember if the nose was painted red or green. But I was shocked that my mom made the statement, this is art. This is contemporary art. And I sort of took it in, and I guess I'm still taking it in today, of how to interpret all that and what it really meant. And then another key moment was my grandmother, who lived in St. Louis, was a amateur artist, was a collector, loved art, and one of her dear friends was one of the great collectors in America of modern art. And I remember going to, well, actually, there were two women who influenced me at that moment. I was exposed to the Wiles collection. They were collectors of Picasso, of Matisse, of Lipschitz, of Miro. And I remember my mom showing me a painting that had been collected by the Wiles, and the painting had been sold to them by Pierre Matisse. And the piece actually belonged to Paul Matisse, who was the father of one of my friends who I grew up with in Cambridge. So I remember that and say, oh, my friend Mikey's father owned this painting as a child. But it was a painting of Miro that was quite large. It must have been like 6 feet by 6 feet. And I remember reflecting at the moment, at that time, wow, I really like this freedom of line, of color. And I said to my mom, Mom, I really like this. I can do that. And being my parent, being protective, realizing that she didn't have a son who was probably a Picasso. She didn't know how to actually respond, really. She sort of chuckled and said, well, maybe she said, oh, just go ahead and do it then, make art. But that was sort of interesting, like, should I be an artist? Can I do that? And then the other artist, really very sober, was when I saw, maybe a year later, we went and visited the Pulitzer's collection. And Emmy was a Harvard curator, and with her husband, they had this amazing collection. And I remember they had collected works by Donald Judd that were just basically wood structures with a different level on the inside. And it was really difficult, challenging art to accept that as contemporary art, or is that architecture? And I was sort of curious about that. But those three instances really, I think, fueled my interest in art. And then I had a great art teacher at the Cambridge Friends School in Cambridge. His name was Andy Tavarelli, and he reinforced the curiosity. He said, let's make art. So in fact, I remember one of the assignments it was during the pop art era. He said, let's make pop art. So I remember there was some foam that I discovered in the art room that looked a lot like peanut butter. And I said, oh, well, if I just roll this foam up and I take a Skippy peanut butter top and I make with my hand a exact copy of the Skippy peanut butter label, and I laid it onto the foam, and I put little rivets in the back of the foam to keep it together so it would stay together like at the volume of a real Skippy peanut butter can, a jar. that we could have a squishy peanut butter. And I still have that actually in my cabinet in my home, where I keep my peanut butter and my organic almond butter, and I have a Skippy peanut butter and my pop art piece there, just to remind me of art practice and art making. So that was my early memory.